Let's move on to the next panel, Challenges for Port Competitiveness in Latin America and the Caribbean, a vision of global leaders. To the stage, I would like to invite our moderator, Giovanni Benedetti. He's here personally. He's the Commercial Vice President of Puerto Cartagena Group. As I said, he will be the moderator of this panel, who will formally introduce the speakers that will participate in this segment. Welcome, Giovanni. You have the floor. Thank you very much, Maria Fernanda. Thanks for the introduction. Well, good afternoon to each and every one of you. I am pleased to be here with you today, and not without first understanding this new reality where we have 3 port experts, 1 live, 2 remotely. But, well, that is the world, that is our new reality, and therefore it is, like I said, the Jetsons when we turn on and turn off the TV. Before introducing the speakers, I would still like to take a couple of minutes to raise some questions for these 3 experts that we have. Well, our guests today are Leo Huisman. He's a Dutch expert, many years in his career, today working for APM Terminal with the Maersk Group, which has passed through many countries, Kenya, the United Kingdom, Singapore, Denmark. So he's very knowledgeable about the Latin American market because he's responsible for all 8 APM ports in Latam. He graduated from the Erasmus University in Rotterdam. We will also hear from Fernando Reveco from Chile. Hello, Fernando. He's the corporate VP with the Ultramar Group, and he's business development. He specialized in business, in an MBA in sales and marketing, and vast experience in everything related to Latin America. And lastly, we will hear from Alberto Robinson. He was a marine merchant officer, or merchant marine officer, and today he's part of DP World Americas, Director of Operations and Engineering there. So before giving the floor to Leo, I had a short presentation. Yes, there they are. We're talking about 2021. Is this a year? This has been a very crazy year, very good for some, very bad for others. And when I say good or bad, I say it in a financial sense. Many people making a lot of money and being very successful financially speaking. But I think that all of us who are here today have had an experience in that our TV arrived late, or the spare part for our car was unavailable, or we went shopping and we couldn't find the product we wanted to buy. For sure, the logistics and supply system has been crazy, and one way or another, we have all experienced this. Challenges for all of the countries in Latin America and the Caribbean. Upcoming challenges, without any doubt, each individual port has a particular challenge or challenges, but I am sure that there are challenges that are common to all. And within this, I would say that we'll need to talk about new technologies, how they will impact and be directly related to our port processes. Without a doubt, the new technologies will make our labor force to change. We'll need new training, possibly a lot of automation. This morning, someone was talking about governance. The port concessions, we know, are coming to an end, and there will surely be new rules of the game in order to renew these concessions. Vertical integration. By this I mean, if something 2021 taught us, 2020 to a certain extent, is that the shipper says do I want to control in a better way my routes and services? I have to own or have my own ports. So we will see perhaps greater vertical integration. And ultimately, this, more than what one or the other purchases it, what this means for the supply chain and for the shippers. Environmental challenges, a zero emission, this is going to be very expensive. We'll have to see how this is assumed. The Panama Canal representative just told us they'll need to charge based on the level of emission each of the vessels has. Perhaps other ports should follow suit. And also talking about port capacity, which ultimately is a relative topic, but is simple. Sometimes we hear, say, the CEO at Merck said, well, the problem is that ports cannot service us in the conditions we have today. It's easy to say, but that would mean an exaggerated idle capacity that nobody is willing to pay. So leaving, like they're throwing out these questions at you, I would like to give the floor to Leo. Please, Leo.
Always good. This is a beautiful, beautiful picture. And this is the pride of our portfolio in Latin America. It's the terminal in Limon. So let's first introduce APM Terminals for those who are not familiar with us. We are part of the Maersk Group, but an independent Dutch company. And we have 12 investments in terminals in Latin America. The most of those are in Brazil, but clearly we have presence in many countries. So my story is based on my experiences of those 12 terminals. Let's take a step back to what's happening out there, because terminals, containers, it's chaos. And if you are an importer or exporter, you have a tough job to move your cargo. Because of COVID in 2020, the impact was this most severe in economy in Latin America. It was a decline on average of 7%. So 2020, COVID dealt a huge blow to our Latin America. And then we saw in 2021 the recovery, and this particular picture is showing how fast parts of the world are recovering from COVID in this particular year. And you see is that Latin America again is not leading that chart. The fastest recovery we see in the United States, we see in Europe, and we see in Asia. So we have chaos currently in the container markets. It's not caused by Latin America. It's pretty much caused by what's happening in the United States and Europe and Asia. And the economists are expecting a further recovery into next year. And again, still Latin America is not leading the chart, which to me, a problem in our industry, ultimately is also an opportunity. There is a lot more going to happen in Latin America because Latin America is an economic engine that will need some time to warm up. But when it's warmed up, it will surprise everybody. So challenges for the port industry, and there's many port authorities here, and of course you have to keep your ports very competitive. And I have elected 4, which is very much driven by what is happening for those whom we serve. That is the exporters and importers in our respective countries. We live by the grace of them being able to sell their produce or products overseas or to be able to import them on competitive prices. That is why we are here. That is driving the essence of our growth. And the consistent feedback I get, and you also get, when you are interacting with the exporters of Latin America, is that they are getting concerned with the safety and security of the supply chain. And I'm from Holland, and many European countries, many importers are getting concerned about the safety and security of the supply chain from Latin America. And they are very powerful groups who are influencing our regulators, our governments. And we see now that the law enforcement agencies in Latin America, but also overseas, are starting to act on those concerns from the exporters and importers. And of course, the logical solution is to use advanced technology to be able to get the supply chain secure. My only ask to the Port Authority is, be involved. Because applying all these advanced technologies could actually bring ports and terminals to a standstill. We need to be able to combine enhanced vigilance with smooth port operations. That is going to be the challenge of the regulator, and we of course have to play our role in that. But the port authorities, please get involved. The second one, again, for the port authorities, based on our exporters and importers, moving and transforming more into digital platforms. In one way, COVID was a blessing, because finally we were motivated to get rid of our paper-loving procedures, which we thrive on in all the ports. We were basically told, this ain't gonna last, this is dangerous. So we've made a lot of progress, but ultimately, from the eyes of the exporters and importers, they will transform their logistics onto digital platforms. And one here mentioned is TradeLens. There are many more, but TradeLens is ahead of the game. And just to mention a few things, in Latin America, there are about 31 terminals signed up to TradeLens. They talk to that platform in the cloud. And there are another 18 going to sign up. So very soon, Latin America, like the rest of the world, we are talking to a digital platform. There is actually, sadly still, one party which is very slow to move. And that's the port authorities and the customs authorities. Please embrace this particular trend. This is how you best serve the exporters and importers in your country. Don't fight it. Don't reinvent it, but engage with the relevant experts to connect. It's a responsibility you have and can accelerate. The other one, upgrading. And we love new cranes, we love new equipment, we love to expand our ports, but this is out of necessity. Because right now I see is that we have quite a few terminals in Latin America where we have congestion when the market is not growing yet. So we are going to see in quite a number of very important economic centers that the ports cannot cope with growth. And soon the shipping lines who have ordered a massive fleet of larger vessels, they're not there yet, but they're coming, we know it. So in 2024, 25, we see a further cascading of large vessels into Latin America. Currently what you see is because there is chaos in the markets. There are some very small services coming out of Asia into Latin America, which, when the market normalizes, do not make any economic sense. We will see a larger number of services cascading to what I call the 366 to 400 meter class. As a port, you got to figure out, do I want to be the home for those large vessels? You better get ready, and fast. If you want to be a feeder port, that's also possible, but then you need different investment decisions. And I do see and I welcome very much that quite a few of the port authorities are taking this extremely serious and are trying to move investments through the pipeline very quickly. We just heard earlier this morning, Montevideo, yes, they are going to be ready in 2025 to receive the big ones. And I see many ports in Brazil getting ready for the challenge of this new class of vessels. And these class of vessels will bring a lot more transshipment in terminals which can handle them. So 3 challenges. I think the port authorities are getting tired. But I have a 4th one for you. And that is carbon neutral. Last year, yeah, it was a nice word, not that serious yet, but we have seen actually an acceleration with shipping lines, an acceleration with very large shippers who are demanding that the industry goes carbon neutral. And you got to figure out as a port, do I want to be relevant when that world is upon me? And that is not only looking at terminals who run on electricity, which is coming from eco-friendly fuels. That one we can figure out. But we're looking also at making sure the vessels can go into cold ironing mode. And ultimately, do you want to play a role in providing the right fuels, new fuels, for the vessel operators? There are going to be players in this who will drive this game. Are you interested to be one of those? That's my 4 challenges I have for today. Thank you very much.
Very enlightening. We'll have questions for you later on. A continuación vamos a presentar a...
Next, we will present Fernando Reveco remotely. I think he's already online with us. Welcome, Fernando. Hi, Giovanni. Hello. It's nice to see you after so long. Unfortunately, I could not be there personally, but I would like to thank you for your kind words and the introduction, and of course, to AAPA Latino organization for inviting me to take part. I am really sorry I'm missing it, but hopefully there will be another opportunity. I fully share the challenges that you have presented to us for the operators and the port industry, and also Leo's comments. These are all very important. What I would like to share with you is a bit different, but it is a challenge that we believe that for the operators, for the industry in Latin America, are also important. First, I would like to introduce a bit what Neltume Ports is, the company I represent, to talk about the 2 challenges in ports in LATAM, basically focused on safety, environmental management, and community management, and also some learnings that have resulted from this journey that we have embarked on: safety, environment, and community. Neltume Ports is a Chilean-Canadian company. 60% of its property is by Ultramar, a company with many years in the port and logistics industry. Ultramar has 3 business lines. We're present in 15 countries in America. We have more than 3,000 employees with 3 business lines, where Neltume Ports is one of them. For ports and stevedores, we also have a logistics business, and also the business that saw us grow from the beginning, which is DICE, which is the agency for integral solutions. On the other side, we have ATCO, a Canadian company based in Alberta, Canada, with 6 business lines present in 12 countries worldwide and more than 6,200 employees in all of its operations. Continuing with Neltume Ports, we are present in 5 countries in America with 23 operations. We have more than 7,000 employees. Last year, we moved more than 44 million companies. That's 2.2 million TEUs. We are a very large operator. We move all types of cargo. Containers are very important, but we also have operations in bulk and break bulk. Down here, you can see some of our companies with different percentage rates of participation. And we are also present in Argentina, Chile, Brazil, Uruguay, and most recently in the United States. Here's some of our distribution in the Americas, strongly in Chile, because we are a group that was born in Chile with Ultramar, but we're also very strong in the Rio de la Plata hinterland. We're in Rosario, passing through Montevideo and into Brazil. We're also in Mobile, Alabama, in the US, where I am right now. And in the east coast of the US with an operation we recently purchased. Our role as a port operator has many branches. We are a multi-purpose operator, Latin, that is growing in the Americas, where we have the classic responsibilities of an operator which is strongly on labor and union relationship. We believe it's fundamental to have successful, sustainable operations. Continuous business development and client development, very much leveraged on our history as a company in the Americas and in the maritime world through our global contacts. The development of infrastructure and engineering, constantly maintained within our operations, is key to differentiate ourselves and be up to date. The development of community and stakeholders, management, environmental management, talent development and management, and of course, safety, culture, and control. This is classical. This is what drives our role as an operator since we started. But there is an aspect that has gained much importance and is key to us that I want to discuss briefly, which are the aspects that make us a sustainable operator in time. And we believe this aspect within the industry is very important, not only because it's an obligation, it's an ethics and morale thing. To pass it on to the people that surrounds us and work for us, but also important to being sustainable in the operations and the industry where we operate, which is safety and the management of stakeholders. And for this, we had a case, our case for change in 2014 for safety and 2019 for community management. We decided to address this in a very committed way and comprehensively. In 2014, our vision, not only for the port industry, was that the frequency index, for instance, for the entire industry was close to 30, very high for those who are familiar with this type of indicator, where our closest competitor was at 40, we were at 16, and one global operator of excellence was below. If we looked at other activities and looked at how it evolved, mining in Chile has been under 2 contractors at 4.6, and ports had dropped to 14.5 by 2018. So this was a challenge for us, because it couldn't be that such an important industry, a key industry and intensive in the use of people, could have these indicators. There was many injuries, fatalities, and damages to people, which we considered are key to our activities. So based on this, we devised a strategy for change, which implied to implied internalizing this culture of change from the highest level in the company to the lowest level, the cargo operators. On the other hand, as global challenges were also advancing, the challenges of the developed world were reaching countries like ours, which is stakeholder management and environmental management. The question is, how good neighbors are we as a port? And in reality, if we look at all the countries where we're present, we see that we are at a historical point. We're a historical port that's in the middle of the city. So the question of a good neighbor is increasingly raised with the people who surround us, the communities around us. And on this depends our feasibility as an industry. So there had to be a switch. We had to change in the way how we promoted our relationships of trust with our stakeholders, transparently and openly, looking to generate value from this relationship. So the prior perception to these changes we've seen as a dissociation on the one hand between safety and the operation, and on the other hand, on the environment side or the environment management or stakeholders, the continuous search for certifications and things that perhaps have nothing to do with the real connection with the people around us. So we worked hard on developing social marketing, which is insufficient, and people were concerned about what a port neighbor was. The impacts can be many in the community, in biodiversity, even the stakeholders themselves in the number of trucks, for instance, the noise, the view. All these are types of challenges that were remote, but were increasingly gaining importance in how this port neighbor engaged with the community and its neighbors. And on the other hand, we had the safety incidents, injuries or casualties, or also damages to infrastructure. The significant impact had a significant impact in our operations. And all of this, of course, was our responsibility and also affected our reputation, but as well as the moral thing. It was a moral thing to do to improve these.
Sadly enough, this is not an overnight change. It's a cultural change, not only in our operations, but in the surrounding system. So we have first to diagnose the situation when it comes to culture, to people's attitude, to their knowledge on safety regarding cultural and environmental management, the relationship with communities, to define the cultural challenges that we have to sort out, also developing programs to create that engagement leadership model, systems and changes in the processes we have in order to identify the commitments that we should be creating in our community. How to move from understanding what the problem is, and not only to be aligned with the change, but also to have that emotional commitment in order to start moving the company, in order to change our attitude on safety and on environmental management. This was a journey in 2014, safety, and then environmental community management in 2019. The idea was looking for different activities for a certain progress, and this enabled us to understand that this is not a change that takes place overnight. We have an endless number of actions at the level of our operations in order to move forward when it comes to the outcomes and also to the reduction in our index of, for example, waste time, and also to be proactive in order to move forward in that cultural change. By 2019, we launched our change of focus in terms of environmental management communities, and also looking after the different activities, understanding cultural change in safety, and applying it not only based on best practices of other operators and other industry, but also looking for feedback among the different communities that surround us in our operations. But to wrap up, or to highlight, the important thing is that this takes time. You do not do this overnight, because you need the cultural transformation of the company. And mainly if it's a port company that has different locations, different cultures, different challenges, or local realities, because of this cultural change that aims at reactions, and not only complying with regulations, but to be proactive, to look after each other in the transparent, the real manner, mainly to look after our environment and our people. The opportunities that we see throughout this journey is that we need to be prepared for a long journey, so that we can reduce all the problems, not only when it comes to environmental management, but when it comes to safety. And in one way or another, to have the case or the necessary resources in order to move forward every year in this cultural change that I have previously mentioned. The main challenges and also the main lessons that we have had is that to reach this cultural change, we need the commitment of the entire company. I mean, bottom, from the upper levels to the bottom, we have our KPIs, we have a reporting system, and not only with our direct employees, but with our contractors and with the port community, in order to have one single indicator, to be willing to share information, best practices, in order to have feedback on what's good. It could be a good idea somewhere else, and to be willing to be resilient, because as I have said, it's a long journey. Sometimes you do not move forward, you're stagnant there, and it needs a lot of engagement in order to move forward. It could be, for example, an accident, a severe accident. Sometimes it's difficult to continue to move forward. The challenges, basically, I insist on the time, that it's a long journey, the leadership role, and the supervisory role, also in the direct line, the alignment, to convey the vision of cultural change at different levels of the company, at the level of directors, of managers, to speak with each one of the employees and with team members. It is extremely important to convey this mission all the time, and to have the necessary conditions in order for people to carry out their job in a safe manner. Training and competencies are very important. There's a high level of turnover. One of the challenges of the pandemic is the high rotation and the lack of availability of people. And obviously, training becomes more complex, so you have to look for creative ways to have everybody on board. And also in environmental management, to have a strategy to reduce emissions. I mean, the footprint is something that we need to reduce, and this requires innovation, technology, and to adopt best practices. Well, thank you very much for your attention. And I understand that there's a Q&A now.
Muchas gracias, Fernando.
Thank you very much, Fernando. The approach on this problem, challenges that we have, is very important. Now, our third participant who is going to participate virtually. So I would like to invite Alberto Robinson. He was in the merchant marine, so he knows about the other side of the coin. For 10 years, he has been working with DP World. So Alberto, you have the floor.
Bueno, buenas tardes a todos. Muchas gracias.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much. I'm fighting here with technology in order to continue with the presentation. Sadly enough, I wasn't able to go. I'm moving from Brazil to Charlotte. When I was asked to share my comments about challenges, the first thing that came to my mind is what keeps me awake at night. And in this process, I receive the quote of the shipping company, so I didn't sleep anymore. Well, but I already had my presentation on climate change, so let's continue with that. And we have felt during the past years the climate change, mainly in the closing of some ports or the maneuvers that we have with our ships.
Movimiento dinámico.
We have like the dynamic movement of the ship moored. We can start this story on June 11, 2020, in San Antonio, Chile, when the ship of 337 meters long, a big container ship in San Antonio, it's 13,100 TEUs. When it was mooring in the STI dock, it got too close to our dock. To the breakwater. And that was considered a near miss. At that moment, we didn't have the worst conditions. The wave was 1.74 meters. The wind was not strong, 11 knots. Actually, well, there were no damages to the ship and nor to the port facilities. However, this gave rise to some alarms. I mean, the Port Authority, the Maritime Authority, and as of that moment, we used again an old rule that was still effective, established the wave limit in 1.50 meters. This was corrected after this for 1.80 meters. So there was certain flexibility in the maneuvers, and actually during the past 3 years, books of more than 253 meters long, they conducted 2,600 maneuvers. I think that my presentation is not showing, so I'm going to share my presentation again.
Okay, hasta el año.
Until 2020, as I previously said, we had 2,600 maneuvers with a wave height of 2.5 meters, which was the height allowed then. As of 2020, as of June, when we started being more strict with respect to the wave height, there was a sensitive drop in the volume of maneuvers.
En este gráfico
On the slide, we can see why do we speak about 2.5 meters when it comes to the wave height. Up to that wave height, the port can have a very high practicability. We can see that as of 2020, and this is for a 6-month period of the first semester, in order to share equal periods in previous years. We see that there has been a significant increase in the number of days in which the port has been closed from 2019 to 2020, an increase in 20%, and for 2021, 23%. Here we can see how this affects the amount of days with closed port. The winter months, April, May, June, it is a concern. June 2020, for 14 days we had the port closed. In 2021, 8.4 days, a little less. But if we go to the accrued days of a closed port, in 2020, we had 71 days with the port closed. In the previous years were 48 days, but in 2020, after the accident that I mentioned, the number of days having the port closed increased. We also have to add certain services.
Las líneas marítimas
And the shipping lines continued, obviously, following the wave height, and to make decisions regarding the vessels before they get there, because ship builders do not have such a big buffer in their schedules. In order to get to a port and wait 2 or 3 days, as we'll see shortly, the average days in which the port is closed is what I mentioned, but ship builders do not have such a buffer in their schedule to wait for so many days. So there were some calls that were canceled because the ships got there and they could not go in, and other calls were canceled because the ship owners, given that there was a potential closing, they made the decision 1 week before, and they will have a detour in the ship, or they will need to moor in another port. And obviously that has a very high logistic cost. So these two matters combine, the closing and the forecast had a high impact on San Antonio. And obviously this was seen in logistic cost, and this made the news on the papers. These are some news that were shared. This was distributed amongst the stakeholders June, July this year. And we can see that this has been something that has become very important, and it's part of the news around the port community, mainly in Chile. In that same report, the Chilean Maritime Chamber, based on the past 12 months, June 2020, June 2021, It shows the number of days in which the ports were closed. So we see San Antonio and Kenneth, which has the terminals. In the case of San Antonio, 80 days. That is quite a concern because given the volume of San Antonio that is close to Santiago and its importance in the logistic chain to be closed 80 days, it's quite a lot. I mean, it is a concern. So this is what I previously mentioned. In the specific case of San Antonio and Lirken, the closure doesn't last that long. I mean, it's the port is closed for 1 day. They don't take longer than that. However, in the case of those vessels on the Pacific, those that have as destination the eastern part of the U.S., Europe, and they depend on crossing the Panama Canal. So that day can represent a delay in their schedules, a delay of many weeks, actually. This is a very clear trend. I have taken this from Ultramar in Chile. This is the annual distribution of surges on the coast. That is from 1979 to 2015. And this shows that climate change is having important impacts, and this is here to stay. Adding the port closures, we have a situation. It's something that we are experiencing in San Antonio and in other terminals where there is the movement of ships when they are moored, and that's caused by the waves, and that represents a risk for our employees, or to our employees. As you can see in the video, I mean, you see that the movement of the vessel results in breaking the mooring lines, and this is a risk to people, and it has an impact on the ship's productivity. Because, the cranes have to move from one place to the other to go together with the movement of the vessel, or they have to wait for the vessel to recover its initial position. So that is something that is happening very frequently. In 2020, we had 23 cases. In 2021, 47 cases. And if we count the mooring lines that were broken on 2020, were 24. And during 2021, the port had to be evacuated, and we had to remove the ships from the mooring deck. And there was a vessel that had 15 mooring lines broken. In one of the cases in which they had to abandon the port, it took 3 to 4 days to bring the ships back to the port, and obviously this was very costly for everyone involved in this. What are we doing now? After the near miss of the SS Margaret in September 2020, we asked a private consultant, away from a maneuver study, where we have that some virtual maneuvers took place using the simulator. And we reached certain parameters up to which the maneuver can take place. The first conclusion is that maneuvers with a wave height of 2.5 meters are possible, provided the wind remains in 20 knots and the current in 1 knot. However, we established 2 critical factors The first one is the speed at which the ship enters. It should be less than 5 knots. And obviously, this leads me to a second comment, or this takes me to a second comment, tugboats and the number of tugboats in order to guarantee that maneuver. And the second one was the turning point of the vessel. I mean, here you have an animation of one of the simulations. And actually, when you look at it this way in the computer, you can see that it is not an easy maneuver. It is quite complicated. After carrying out these maneuvers, and here we need to be pretty fair, and I think it's valid to say this, that the Maritime Authority of Chile and the Port Authority of San Antonio, it's as of the first time they were highly committed with this. They participated actively in all these studies, in all these simulations. So when we started analyzing the first maneuvers, we started seeing some improvements that were indeed necessary. The idea was to improve the equipment of the pilots. I mean, there is a device that enables the pilots to have a better position with respect to the ship. We had to improve also some exercises with the pilots, and with these small improvements in early 2021, March or April 2021, the Maritime Authority authorized the maneuvering test with a wave height of 2 meters. Today we have a constraint of 1 meter 80 centimeters. And on October 27th, the maneuver tests were completed with success. And now we go to, now we are waiting for the approval or for the publication of this new standard. As to the internal movement of the ships whenever they are moored, and also the mooring lines, we are working in San Antonio in order to install, at least to test the concept, a dynamic mooring system. There are 2 or 3 in the market, and some work with hydraulic pistons with the mooring lines, and others work with a vacuum system, and they use a device that keeps the ship without movement there. Our desire was to install it for test during the next winter, but I don't think if we'll be able to do this by the next winter, but at least we'll have it ready for the winter of 2023. With this, we are expecting not only to improve the availability of the port, and the idea is to keep the ships there whenever there are surges, and also to improve the safety of workers and to improve the productivity of the ships. I think that one of the main lessons learned is to ask the right question, not to ask why is that the height, but it's to ask what is it that we need in order to have safe maneuvers with a wave height of 2.5 meters. What is it that we're going to do? The port density is something that we take into account, but what is it that we need in order to carry out these maneuvers safely? And I think that this has been the key factor in order for stakeholders, authorities, to get involved and to jointly participate with this private initiative. The maneuvering studies, all this was shared with all the operators, but the dynamic mooring system, they do have a high cost, sensitive cost, between $5 and $11 million. And obviously, that's going to require higher investments, which are indeed necessary in order to maintain the port structure. Regarding these new challenges, well, this is what I wanted to share with you. Thank you very much for your attention.
Muchas gracias, Alberto, por mostrarnos.
Thank you, Alberto, for showing or sharing with us the challenge of the surges of the South Pacific. In one way or another, this affects all the ports of the region. I wonder if we have time for a short Q&A. No, it seems that there's no time for questions. Okay, so Leo, you're saved for the bell, by the bell. So thank you very much for your attention.